This is Peace Talks, the podcast that covers everything to do with competitive jigsaw puzzling. Every year, jigsaw puzzlers from all over the globe descend on Spain to see who is the best in the world. On this first of 2 episodes of Peace Talks, we're going to talk about who you should keep an eye out for this international event. But there's no way I could do that on my own. So with me on this journey is world-class puzzler in her own right, Evie Caron.
Hello.
Hi,
Thanks for
Evie.
having me, Rob.
Thanks for joining me. I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say about just your wealth of knowledge. I've been thinking of myself as like the single drop of knowledge in this big ocean of knowledge that you have. So thank you for joining me.
Well, I'm excited to hear about your stats because I understand that you've crunched some stats in preparation for this episode.
I've brought a few numbers with me for sure, and we'll talk about those in a little bit. But first, you've been to Worlds. Give us some background on what that's all about.
Yeah, so I went to Worlds last year for the first and only time so far. I do hope to go back, but I'm not going this year.
No?
No, I felt pretty burnt out with speed puzzling after Worlds.
I've heard that story a couple of times now, actually.
I also have. So I know I'm not alone. Some people come back and get right back into it, but that wasn't me. It took really until I realized that I had to start prepping for Winter Carnival in January to like force myself to get back into speed puzzling starting probably in December. And then it was like, it wasn't as fun to practice for Winter Carnival and then Nationals in March. And so I knew that I wanted a break after that.
So you're taking a bit of a hiatus this year. What was it
I
like
am.
being at Worlds?
So I would describe it like a swim meet. I grew up doing competitive swimming, and especially in the beginning, there's just a lot of time waiting around, and you're in this big dome, which is kind of has like a pool vibe without the pool. And so the puzzlers are in the middle, and everyone else hangs out around the sides. There's also an outside area. And so people are just like hanging out, watching other people compete and waiting, and just having fun, spending time with each other and meeting people that they've met online and never met in person.
Now, where is Worlds?
So it's in Valladolid, Spain, which is about an hour train ride outside of Madrid.
Do you happen to know why that particular city became the mecca for World's jigsaw puzzling?
Yes, it is the hometown of Alfonso Osorio Alvarez. I think that's his last name. Put me on the spot there. Well, just everyone knows him as Alfonso. So it's the hometown of Alfonso. And so he, as the person who has organized Worlds since 2019, has been able to do that job, largely as the solo person kind of spearheading it by doing it in his hometown. Also, it is less expensive there. So
Is that right?
Yeah. So once you're there, the hotels and the food, pretty affordable.
That's good to know. So we're recording this on August 12th. The actual competition kicks off September 17th and goes through the 22nd. What are people doing at this point to prepare?
So they are speed puzzling a lot of 500-piece Ravensburger puzzles. Tiffany just stayed over with me this weekend for
Tiffany Medeiros.
Yes, Tiffany Medeiros, and she was here to compete in New England regionals. And she left my house with 12 500-piece Ravensburgers that she hadn't done before.
Wow.
And so, yeah, there's a lot of focus on the 500-piece Ravensburgers. Last year, people were really obsessing about the circle puzzles.
Sure.
And there's a lot of talk about, like, should we be doing the circle puzzles? Will the circle puzzles show up? They did show up, and I screamed.
Is that right?
Because it was just, like, so exciting that, like, after all this, Oh my gosh, Yvonne was right. Yvonne Foyt had like really, she kept saying that the circle puzzles were going to be there, and she was right.
I saw some people kicking themselves for not having practiced the circle puzzles.
Yes, and some people are talking about the circle puzzles. I'm seeing that on Instagram, like, oh, I need to do more circle puzzles. These ones are hard for me.
Got to be ready for everything.
Right. So everyone is definitely speculating about what puzzles will be there. I've been seeing people placing orders from Amazon Germany so that they can get the European puzzles that have
Right,
been released here that may show up.
right. Because
Yeah.
the puzzles are not guaranteed to be unique until the finals of every round. Is that right?
Right, right. Yeah, and some of them are unreleased in the US but available in Europe already. For example, the Amy Stewart puzzle from I think round C or D last year, archaeologist's
Right.
desk.
Yeah.
Amy Stewart isn't licensed to be sold in the U.S.
Interesting.
She has an exclusive license with Buffalo Puzzles, so we still haven't seen that one here in the U.S.
See, already I'm drinking from the fountain of your knowledge. Your knowledge is deep and wide, and I appreciate all of these little tidbits you're throwing along.
One other thing that people are probably doing, they're probably puzzling in restricted space.
Mm.
They're marking their tables, and forcing themselves to practice in that smaller world size table space.
Yeah, that's actually a really good segue into the competition format. You want to talk a little bit about that?
This year is a little different because, in addition to individual semifinals, they've added pairs semifinals rounds. Other than that, the format is largely similar to what we saw last year. The group sizes will be much larger in the individual rounds. So people last year did not have to share tables in the prelim rounds, but they will be sharing tables in their prelim rounds this year.
There are 6 heats of prelims in the individuals now, with as many as 204 competitors each. So they only have 102 tables.
Hmm.
So you're right; everybody's going to be sharing tables, and that's its own skill, is to be able
Yeah.
to puzzle in such a small space. So, like you said, people are
Mm.
practicing that.
Especially with a circle puzzle. The circle puzzle space, that size table space is challenging with a circle.
So 60 people from each heat move on to the semis. There are 2 semi rounds of 180 people. And then we're looking at an hour and a half for another 500-piece puzzle, of which 90 folks will move on to the finals.
Hmm.
Finals are 180 people, with top 12 from each semi getting their own tables. And you have an hour and 15 minutes to complete a 500-piece puzzle. So it's 500-piece puzzles all the way through for the individuals. On to the pairs, we have 4 heats of as many as 204 pairs. Again, shared tables, but now with twice as many people at each table. Did you ever practice much 2 people at a small space table?
Really, you're asking if I've practiced like 4 people working on 2 separate puzzles.
Or have you shaved off a little part of your table and worked with a pair on that? Either way.
Yeah, yeah, I have practiced puzzling in restricted space as a pair.
And that's something that as you get towards worlds, you need to have that on your list of things to do.
Yeah.
From there, you move on to the semifinals for the pairs, where there's 180 pairs with, again, the top 12 in each heat get their own table. Everybody else gets to suffer. And it's an hour and 15 minutes to complete a 500, with the top 50 moving on to the finals from each semi. That means that the finals have 100 pairs. Everybody gets their own table. But
Hmm.
now it's 2 hours for a 1,000-piece puzzle. Do a lot of things change when you move from a 500 to a 1,000-piece?
Yeah, there's definitely more endurance involved. You have a little more time to think about your approach, and there may be more room for different partners' strengths to come into play, but it's a good thing that they have the table space they do.
1,000 pieces is no joke when you're trying to do it in a small table space.
Oh, US Nationals 2024.
And then on to the teams, where this year there are three heats of 102 teams.
Hmm.
That's a lot of teams, actually. But everybody gets their own table.
Everyone gets their own table. And I don't think we have that many teams registered quite yet. We'll see if more come on. But yeah, it looks like as of now, it's like 231 teams registered. So
Okay.
they're not quite full yet.
In this heat, you have 3 hours to pick two 1,000 pieces puzzles from a batch of four.
Hmm.
That brings with it its own extra layer of strategy, as we've seen from last year. Puzzle selection matters.
It does. It does.
And then you got 35 teams moving on to the finals with 3 hours for 2,000 pieces to 1,000 pieces. But there you're looking at just two. You have to do those two, but you can do them in any other order, right?
You can. Some strategy involved there too.
And that's about all there is as far as the structure of the competition goes. So now everybody's an expert. So, just a couple of quick stats before we get going. There are about 1,200 individuals signed up currently as of this recording. In this episode, we'll be focusing primarily on the US, for which there are 116 entrants so far. How'd you like to tackle all of these people?
I was thinking we should first talk about our US Worlds veterans who've been to Worlds before, and then we can highlight some new Worlds American puzzlers who will be at Worlds for the first time this year.
Nice.
But also, I wanted to ask you about the stats that you've been crunching because I know that you're planning to sprinkle them in when you can.
I pulled everything I could find for individuals for 2024, everything off speedpuzzling.com, the Eurojam competitions, plus all of the US and the world's competitions going as far back as they go. So in total, we have 78 rounds of individual competition in the data. We're going to be focusing mostly on the 500 piece competitions. And of the 116 Americans, we have data on 76 of them. So we should have something to talk about. There are four things that I'm going to talk about as we go that people may not be used to hearing about. So I'll just run through them real quick. First is average rank, and that's just how high up in the rankings are they over all of the competitions that we have. So if your average rank is 3, that means that on average you finish third. Then there's relative speed, which is how fast you are compared to the middleist person in that same event. And that helps to better control for harder and easier puzzles. So we can see people who are much faster than the middleist person and people who are less fast. I'll be pulling the fastest 500 time, the fastest 500 piece time for some folks so that we can see how fast they really get going. And then a stat that I really love is the average pieces per minute across all of their competitions, which just tells you how fast people on in any given minute, how many pieces they're putting into a puzzle over all of their competitions. So we'll dive into those as that makes sense. But why don't you kick us off with some veterans?
All right, so let's start with the Reuter sisters.
Love the Writer Sisters.
Me too. That's why we're starting there. So Kathy and Jean are identical twin sisters. Um, Jean has the bangs. Kathy does not have bangs.
Nice.
Can remember that by Jean and bangs both have an N sound at the end of them. Jean and Kathy shocked the American speed puzzling scene 2 years ago yeah, 2 years ago at 2022 US Nationals. No one knew who they were, and they won the pairs competition by over 6 minutes.
I love these kinds of stories where people you don't know who the people are and suddenly they're just dominating.
Yes, exactly. It was totally like, who are these people? It turns out that they had actually been speed puzzling under the radar for years. In like 1999 or 2000, had competed in a St. Paul Winter Carnival.
Hmm.
And since then, they had been ordering the Puzzle Twist Winter Carnival puzzle every year so that they could speed puzzle it and compare their times. They are very strong puzzlers individually, They didn't start competing individually until a bit later, actually, probably like 2023. They competed individually at Worlds in 2023. But in 2022, they only competed as a pair in the US Nationals.
I was talking to Kathy a week or so ago, and she said that I'd heard that they intentionally did not compete against each other in individuals, and she said that is some sort of a game of telephone, that they didn't know that there were individuals in the first competition that they entered, and so on subsequent competitions they have definitely entered individually. And as I
Hmm.
told Kathy then, the world is better for having more writers in the competition.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you could ask them about that and put that rumor to rest.
She was amused, but that it had persisted this long.
Yeah. So they actually live together in Washington State. So it's a great situation for them to get their pairs puzzle practicing in. And they actually work in the puzzle industry.
Is that right?
Yes, they worked together on a series of Nancy Drew mystery computer games
Love that.
for like a decade. So I think Kathy was a game designer and Jean was a lead tester for the game.
Yeah, they are fast. It's fun looking at the metrics for Kathy and Jean because they are fast in that they rise to the top of every metric right next to each other. All the time of competing with each other, and I assume friendly puzzling as well, means that their stats are very similar. We've got Kathy, whose relative speed is 1.66, so she finishes almost twice as fast as the middlest person in any competition. She's got the fastest piece per minute at 11.27 of anybody in my list.
Mm.
Jean's not really far behind with her fastest piece per minute at 11.15. I know Kathy won the Portland Jigsaw Masters, which was here in Portland a couple of weeks back, and then Jean was second. I can't imagine a more cohesive pair of folks in a competition.
Are you saying that Kathy is a little bit better?
You know, it is definitely the case that the puzzle, the person, and the day all come
Mm.
together to make a successful competition. Kathy might have a slight edge in statistics over the course of this year, but I think at any given day, Jean can be right there passing her up. Kathy had said that they compete for bragging rights in their house, and she was happy to be able to take home bragging rights from the Portland Jigsaw Masters. So that leads me to believe that she doesn't always have the rights.
Well, I'll get behind Jean and root for Jean. So Kathy and Jean, they went to Worlds last year. Kathy came in 23rd in the individual final. Jean came in 29th. And they, at the time, they were saying that they didn't think that they would be going back to Worlds.
And yet,
But I think they've just gotten in deeper into the speed puzzling community. They both helped plan pieces of the US Nationals kind of larger convention. So they helped to plan the sprint puzzles as well as the like talks that were happening there. And yeah, I think they've really found their people in their scene. And so I hope they keep coming back. But I think they also think that they can puzzle faster this year and they're going back for redemption.
one of them, I believe it might have been Gene, was instrumental in the Northwest regionals in
Mm,
Seattle here a little while back. So I know that they're definitely deep into the scene at this point. It's going to be hard to
yeah,
extract them.
I'm really happy about that.
Yeah. Now they are fast, no doubt about it. But what do you think about when they come to thousand-piece puzzles? It seems like they're
Mm,
not as fast at thousands.
that's fair. Yeah, I think endurance in general, and especially over the course of the like 5 days of Worlds, will
So
be
much.
more of a challenge for them.
Yeah, it's both it can be a physical toll just being hunched over a puzzle for that long, but I imagine, I don't actually know, maybe a mental toll as well. It's hard to keep focus for 5 plus days.
Absolutely. But let's talk about the rest of their team. Let's talk about who will be puzzling with the Reuter twins next.
I'm so excited by this team. So we got the Reuters, and then who's next?
So next, let's talk about Becca Taylor. I love Becca's puzzler origin story.
Oh, tell me.
So Becca grew up on a tugboat,
What?
and yeah,
That's
that's
awesome.
and that's just kind of like an extraneous detail in the story. But, picture a 5-year-old on a tugboat with chicken pox, and she was scratching. And to stop her from scratching, her parents bought her a puzzle to keep her hands busy. However, they didn't know much about puzzles, and the puzzle they bought was a 5,000 piece puzzle of
Wow.
large cats, like tigers, lions.
Lots of fur.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Becca finished it in about a week, and I haven't seen any chickenpox scars on her. So I
Wow.
guess
And
it
so
I guess it worked.
I guess that is, I mean, for the right person, I guess that can keep you real busy for quite some time.
And honestly, I think like her puzzle strength comes from this like giant puzzle she did on the floor of this tugboat because there wasn't a table that was large enough for it.
Uh huh.
And her strength is doing these large color sections, right? When you've got a 5,000 piece puzzle, you're doing these large blocks of color. And that is definitely Becca's strength.
Yeah, got to watch that unfold a little bit at the Portland Jigsaw Masters recently when she was competing in the pairs with Sarah Schuler. And it was a puzzle with a lot of like colors around the edge and then a lot of patterns in the middle. And they both immediately split, with Becca doing the colors. And you could see just loved getting them all together. And Sarah went right down the middle with all the patterns. So one of the things I've also run across is I told Becca that, to me, in my kind of head canon, my mythology of various people, like Becca is the person who is like, you've made it if you're in a pairs or team with Becca. Like, she's in a lot of pairs, she's in a lot of teams, she takes on a lot of different folks, and so I think that if you found yourself in a competition on Becca's side, you're probably in a pretty good place. More than one person has told me that they learn some deep tactical thing from Becca,
Hmm,
and different things.
cool.
So not only is she great in her own right, but a deep depth of knowledge as well.
And talking about Becca's pair, she's got a really exciting Paris partner who we'll talk about later. So just keep listening for that.
So who else is on the Reuters team?
So the final person on the team with the Reuters, the team is called the Busy Birdies, is Andrea Pang, who has been on your podcast, Rob.
She is. I have a special place in my heart for her. She took me on very early in, like, we're episode 5, so there's not a whole lot of depth in terms of my overall podcast history, but she was immediately a yes when I reached out to her because, much like the Reuters you were talking about earlier, she sprang onto the scene in her own right in 2023 in Worlds. And so I reached out to her and said, "Hey, I'm thinking of doing a podcast." And she said yes. And we had a great interview. And I've seen her many times since, and she's a delight every time. So Andrea's, like I said, she's got a special place in my heart. So I'm excited to see this team, especially, is going to be hard to beat.
Yeah, Andrea took fourth at Worlds in 2023, the top American finish
Yeah.
ever.
It's
Um,
more impressive even than it sounds, right? Because as you said, lots of Americans had tried to get better than that. She was the first to crack the top 5.
Andrea's favorite brand is New York Puzzle Co., which is not a classic or like classic modern American look. It's more of the like vintagey sort of puzzle images. Um, and I think, personally, I don't like doing New York Puzzle Co. puzzles that much because they're tough puzzles. And I think Andrea really brings this advantage on these tough puzzles.
Yeah, she definitely has depth when it comes to complexity and piece count. She has said that she really enjoys a 1,000 piecer because it allows her to spend some time upfront planning, and then which you can't do in a more sprint based puzzle piece count, and that really pays off. You can watch her sort of really get to know the puzzle early on, and then you see her accelerate through the competition over the course of the rest of the puzzle. She does a lot of competitions, and she wins most of those competitions. What amuses me is that she's usually first or second or like ninth, which is speaks to
Hmm.
the combination of a puzzle and the puzzler. Like if it is a puzzle that's not in your wheelhouse or not in your wheelhouse on that day, it can make a huge difference in terms of your overall performance.
So last year, she puzzled pairs with her daughter Clara. This year, Clara will be in her first year at college, and so she is not going to Worlds. And so instead, Becca has a new pairs partner. Let's see, anything else that we want to talk about with Andrea before we move on to Andrea's pairs partner?
Just a couple of stats. First of all, she competes in the Eurojam competitions, which she offered. She said she had one that she couldn't do, and she offered it up to me. And I'm like, wait, that's like at 1 in the morning. So she's out competing even late into the night.
Hmm,
She is the second highest average rank of anybody in any American in my data. So she finishes typically at right around second place. So second place on average. That includes her like occasional ninth place.
One other thing you'll notice about Andrea is that she wears reading glasses to puzzle. And she let me try them on last year because I was very curious. And I, as a younger puzzler, I worry about my eyes going. And so Andrea gives me hope and inspiration. Like, I want that type of puzzling career.
Right. Yeah, my wife has puzzle specialty glasses. She has glasses for reading, but glasses specifically for puzzling. They have to be the right
Hmm,
magnification that you can see things both like you can see what the details are, but when you back up you can still see the overall puzzle. Apparently it's quite the fine balance. I had no idea.
interesting. So let's talk about Andrea's pairs partner next. So Andrea and Kelly paired together at US Nationals. They won pairs at US Nationals. So let's talk about Kelly. Kelly is a second year medical student. And she has been around on the speed puzzling scene for a while. She took fourth at US Nationals in 2022. She placed fifth in the solo competition at US Nationals this year. And at Worlds in 2023, she placed 28th in the individual final.
Yeah, she doesn't do a lot of competitions outside of the big in-person competitions. So I actually don't have a whole bunch of data about her beyond
Mm,
just the things that you've already said. What I do know though is when you pair her up with Andrea, they're a force to be reckoned with. They work really well together. One of the most amazing things that I saw at nationals this last year was Kelly and Andrea working on a pairs puzzle in a half a table, and they had such great structure to how they had the layout of their table. So again, I feel like they're definitely a an extremely strong pair. And once you move to thousand pieces in the pairs, that gives Andrea's thousand piece skills a chance to shine. So I think that they will be doing they have every opportunity to do great this year.
yeah, I'm excited to watch them. All right. Well, now that we've started talking about Kelly, so we talked about the Busy Birdies, but Kelly is not part of the Busy Birdies team. Kelly is part of a different team called Some Assembly Required.
Nice.
So let's talk about the rest of Some Assembly Required.
Yeah. So who's next on the Some Assembly Required team?
So next up is Tiffany Medeiros. I love a good puzzler origin story. So let me share Tiffany's. So Tiffany came into speed puzzling after a breakup. So after this breakup, she, had a lot more time available and decided she needed a new hobby and very intentionally started researching to find a hobby. And she came across speed puzzling.
Got to enjoy somebody who
And
researches there to find a hobby.
yeah, I love the intentionality. And so even though she hadn't really done jigsaw puzzles since she was a kid, she thought like, I did like puzzles. Let me try this. I could get into this. And well, she did get into it. And, she is now one of the fastest American puzzlers.
Yeah, she's fifth overall in my rank of average rank. She comes in typically around third place. And that's over 8 events in 2024. So it's a fair amount of events, which puts her ahead of both of the Reuters. She has the fastest single 500 piece time this year that I have in my data at 31.8 minutes. And that gives her the fastest single pieces per minute at 15.74 pieces per minute in a single event. So she can
Wow.
be a demon.
You also might remember her from the 2023 Worlds. In the semifinal round, she almost pushed her circle puzzle off the table, and a volunteer had to point out, like, oh, watch it, and she saved it. But that was some of the great puzzle drama that was streaming last year. Also on that team is Karen Cavett, better known as Karen Puzzles, my former teammate and Paris partner.
That's right. Karen and Karen.
Yeah, so Tiffany's taken my place this year.
So with Karen, I feel like it's easy to forget that somebody who runs a wildly popular YouTube channel that isn't really focused on speed does come up. It's easy to lose track of the fact that she's actually got some serious skills. She finished second in the 2022 US Nationals, so she's not something to mess around with.
Yeah, I think most people are familiar with Karen. She and Tiffany placed fifth as a pair in the 2024 US Nationals finals. So I have high hopes for them. And then the final teammate is someone who I got to puzzle with this past weekend, Kat Dilks. Kat, Tiffany, my husband Dan, and I were all on a team for New England Regionals. And so Kat is also, all these people we've been talking about are Worlds veterans so far. Kat was not at Worlds last year, but she was there in 2022. She placed 15th in the individual final at 2022 Worlds. She was the top American to place. And she also placed seventh in pairs and third in teams.
She can be a little all over the place, though. My data, she's anywhere from 4th to 36th in 500s. So when she shines, and she's had her highest solo results in coming in second in
Hmm.
1,000 piece events. So that seems to be her strength. I've never met her in person, but she's one of those people that I sort of cheer for, in part because I like her Instagram handle, Cat Sucks at Puzzles, and every time I see it, I'm like, no, you don't.
Yeah, she is someone who also, we were talking about this, she suffered from burnout after
Oh, interesting.
2022 Worlds. So I think she still is kind of like, oh, practicing, like it's not as exciting and fun as it used to be
Interesting.
for
So
her.
I wonder if there will be a shakeout of people who are like got into it, were having a good time, and then sort of overcommitted, and then got disillusioned with jigsaw
Mm.
puzzling and may go back to just doing puzzles for fun.
I hope not, but hopefully even if people leave the speed puzzling scene, we'll stay puzzle friends. Something interesting about Kat is that Kat and her 2022 Paris partner from Worlds, Gray Rogers, are currently being followed for a full length documentary that's, I think, currently titled Puzzle People. And it's and part of that is their journey together to 2025 Worlds. It's expected to come out in spring 2027, so that's a ways off.
It is a ways off.
And then also look out for Kat's sleeve tattoo. It'll be easy to spot on the live stream.
All right, who next?
All right, so we've talked about two American teams so far. Let's talk about sticking with the world's veterans, another team. Also, some other puzzlers who've been on the podcast before. So, Yvonne Foyt, Ali Krasny, and the Golden State Puzzlers.
Yep. Not surprisingly, I'm a big fan of both of them, both because they're great puzzlers, but also great people. They are one of the few, maybe the only sponsored team out there. sponsored by Cobble Hill.
From the details I've heard, they have one of the best sponsorships. Sounds like a pretty sweet deal.
Yeah, they finished was it sixth in 2022 as a team, 18th in 2023. So they have their work cut out for them. But if Allie's posted schedule and Yvonne's hints at the effort they're putting into practice are true, they're definitely putting in the work.
Yeah, let's talk about Tammy first. So Tammy is not only a speed puzzler, but she is just a puzzler in general. So she is a Sudoku champion. She won a national Sudoku championship. Actually, like the last year they held the championship, so
Hmm.
we can also call her like the reigning
Wow.
U.S. Sudoku champion. And she also is an intense escape room artist. She recently completed, I think, her 500th room
Wow.
in Canada, and has competed in the like World Escape Room Championship as
You know,
well.
I was about to be surprised that there's a World Escape Room Championship, but we're talking about competitive speed puzzling, so there's not really much I could say.
Yeah, I don't think that's the name of it. I think it's like sponsored by Red Bull, and Red Bull is in the name, maybe. That's outside my area of expertise.
Right.
So Tammy's also a Guinness World Record holder for speed puzzling. Specifically, there is a 250 piece puzzle that features an image of multiple Guinness World Records. And Tammy set the record for the fastest time to do it, under 10 minutes, just under 10 minutes. And to prepare for that, she practiced it 300 times.
Dang.
Yeah,
That is some serious commitment.
I know. So, right, if she is applying that to preparing for Worlds this year, she's a serious contender.
She retired this year, and I know Yvonne has said that it has been more difficult keeping up with her now that she has all this time. Tammy has all this time to practice.
Yeah, she not only retired from the USA JPA board, she also retired from her job at Google. So she thought she would have a lot more time. I think she may be filling it with other passion projects, including a new YouTube channel or like multiple YouTube channels.
Two puzzling unicorns, I think it is.
Yes, that's one of them. She also has like I think her own personal one where she posts like time lapses and things like that.
So world champion at being world champions at stuff.
She has so many hobbies. She's also very efficient. One of my favorite Tammy stories that I'd like to share. We have these like puzzles with sheets in them where we, write down our name, the date, the time it took us to complete the puzzle, and we pass these puzzles around so you can open up the puzzle, you can see this list, and before you do the puzzle, you can kind of say like, oh, I want to get like right around my Betty's. That's what I'm aiming for. Like I want to beat my friends.
Mm-hmm.
So Tammy, in order to save time, bought T stickers, and instead of writing her name on the name line, she just puts a T sticker on there.
The moment you said in order to save time, I was already laughing. So
Tammy loves sorting, so she may appear to be kind of slower in the first half of a puzzle and then unexpected, kind of surprise you by catching up because she has put a lot of time into sorting.
yeah, it's a rare, I feel like tactic, but one you do see from time to time, and it can be hard to judge how those folks are doing, especially if you don't know what they're capable of. Like you said, you see them putting together piles of stuff, and you're like, wow, they're so far behind. But then they just have a bunch of smaller puzzles to put together, so it pays off.
Tammy has also competed in some of the Euro Jigsaw Jams.
That's
And
right.
in one, I saw her and I was like, Tammy, did you like start the call late or something? Were you like busy? But she like caught up. It was just like she was, 25 minutes in, and I was like, where's the puzzle? Like all I see are like piles of pieces. But then she came back around and put that sorting to good use.
Awesome. You want to talk about Yvonne a little bit?
Absolutely. So, Yvonne is a 41-year-old camera person who lives and works in LA. She was the 2022 US National Solo Champion. And her strength is busy puzzles, which my theory is it relates to her job. So, like her job as a camera person is like see the scene and keep track of everything that's going on in this, complex scene. And so her strength with puzzling is being able to see that whole image, pick up a piece and put it right, like quickly reference the box and put things exactly where they go.
Yeah, we also learned when she was on the podcast that the very first puzzle she remembers doing over and over and over again was a pretty busy puzzle. So it's possible that she just sort of trained out on
Mm.
that style of puzzle.
I know Yvonne is hoping to be able to practice a lot in this next month. The first part of 2024, she's been working a lot. So in 2023, her industry was striking, and so she's been making up for lost income, working very hard, and I think she's hoping to not be on set in this next month and be able to focus on practice.
Yeah, I think she's traveling as well, though. So she's got all kinds of things competing for her time, and I'm getting the sense that when it comes down to the last month or so before Worlds, other things need to take a back seat.
Yeah, I hope they can. I mean, she is also someone who takes a puzzle to her kids' karate practice or swim practice or her oil change and like will do it in like, the oil change place or in the back she'll do it in her trunk of her like her car. So, she does definitely try to get it in, but her hours when she's working are like, like 8 to 8 or something. So doesn't leave a lot of time for practice. But I heard she just got back from her trip and there's no next show on the horizon.
Nice.
So
So it's all puzzling from
fingers
here on
crossed.
out. Speaking of grinding away, Ali Krasny, well known for doing some grinding of her own.
Oh, I love that transition there. That's a good one. Yeah, Allie loves to grind on a speed run challenge, and she loves to collect data on herself too, which is super cool.
Woman after my own heart.
There's a whole podcast that you did with Allie, so Allie fans or people who want to learn more about Allie can go listen to that episode.
Although now that you've told me that Tammy did the same puzzle hundreds of times, I'm sort of, I think that Ali needs to step it up.
Maybe after Worlds. So then the final team member of the Golden State Puzzlers is Lindsay Steenstra. Lindsay is the team manager, and a fun fact about her is that she is pretty passionate about cheese and like posts memes about cheese in her Instagram stories like pretty much every day. And they're always good ones. I don't
Good
know where they
cheese
all come
memes.
from.
All right.
Yeah, good cheese memes. Follow Lindsay.
So that's the Golden State Puzzlers for you.
Yeah, so back in 2023, I got to go to Puzzle Camp, aka Yvonne's 40th birthday, which she talked about on her
Mm-hmm.
episode with you. Um, all of the Golden State Puzzlers, of course, were there. Another friend who came with us was Sarah Schuler. So let's talk
I
about
love
Sarah
Sarah.
next.
She's a speed demon. I know that she's earned a nickname for her placements.
Yes, so she calls herself or has called herself second place Sarah. However, in the Portland Jigsaw Masters, she placed first in pairs and first in teams. So I was watching that live stream. There's some redemption for the second place.
There's something about her though that seems embarrassed to be first. I don't know if embarrassed is the right word, but I started calling her first place Sarah, and she was like, "No, no, no, still second place Sarah." Maybe she's just really. It takes the pressure off a little bit to not be first place Sarah.
Yeah, I think that's right. She got this, nickname, if we're gonna call it that, because she plays. So Sarah and I and Caron, and our teammate Michaela were a team at Worlds last year. We came in second place behind the Czech team. Sarah also, with Michaela, placed second in the pairs competition finals at Worlds. And she also placed second at US Nationals this year in the individual event, the pairs event, and the teams
So the
event.
name is well earned.
It might stick for a little bit. So Sarah is part of a Minnesota puzzle dynasty. For context, especially for those non American puzzlers who might be listening to this, Minnesota is in like the center of the United States. It's not known for much. However, for a long time, it has been the capital of competitive puzzling in the United States. And Sarah's mom and uncle have been competing in speed puzzling teams events for years and years and years. And Minnesota is also where the Winter Carnival is held, which has been going on, I don't even know, but since the past millennium.
Yeah, it's a giant competition too.
Yes, it's huge. So when Sarah was in her early teen years, she got to join the family puzzle team at that was competing at Winter Carnival. Um, and you'll also probably see Sarah's mom, Lisa Schuler, in the chat on the live stream. So look out for Lisa and supporting her daughter.
She was competing at nationals this last year uh, with Leslie Mallory of the
Mm-hmm.
Mallory
Sure.
move.
Yeah.
So that
Mm-hmm.
was a fun combination talking to
Yep.
both. We sat right next to them, my wife and I, in our pairs early heat, and they were both delightful. Yeah, Sarah doesn't do a lot of individual competitions. When I talked to her at the Portland
Yeah.
Jigsaw Masters, she said she hadn't been doing any competitions. I think maybe even practices individually for some time. So this was sort of a warm up stretch for her to get back into puzzling.
Yeah, she's been very busy in the past year, starting up a business that she calls Sarah Does Puzzles, where she hosts more casual speed puzzling competitions at local breweries around Minnesota. And she's been very busy, like running a competition, about like 5 nights a week, really almost every night. Um, so yeah, I got the same story
Hmm.
from her at nationals that she hadn't really been practicing before it, and she surprised herself by how well she did. She threw up right before the solo competition, but I think it like worked well for her. Yeah, I mean, second, she's a strong American puzzler to watch out for.
She is. And if you want to hear more Sarah content, I actually have an episode with her coming up. So more
Ooh,
more
that's
Sarah
exciting.
on Peace Talks.
I do think Sarah is vulnerable to the European style puzzle image. So,
What does that mean?
well, things like photos or oil paint art. Um,
Interesting.
so, for example, she placed second in the 2023 semifinals on the bright ocean circle puzzle
Mm-hmm.
with the brightly colored rainbow fish, and she placed 45th in the final. So, much lower than would be expected based on her seed on that like photo cafe image.
Right. Yeah, yeah. Again, it's that combination of the puzzle and the
Mm,
player that they have to be in sync for you to really do well. And again, that's part of what makes this exciting for me is that you get different puzzles and it sends some people to the top and some people to the bottom.
yeah. But you know what? I asked her about this recently. I saw her earlier this summer at Puzzle Parley, and she said that if she gets a photograph image on the final puzzle, she thinks she is going to do well on it because she's going to put more pressure on herself and it'll just help her.
Is she the kind of person who excels under pressure, do you think?
She thinks she does.
Well, she did throw up and then go right into puzzling, so that's a certain amount of pressure management right there.
So, Sarah, World's veterans, will be competing in teams with two other World's veterans, Andrea Kyle and Don Rasmussen. So Andrea was Andrea was 19th at U.S. Nationals in 2024. She placed 40th at 2023 Worlds. A fun fact about her is that her Instagram handle is Puzzle Blush because her cheeks get so red when she competes. And you can look for that on the live stream. Now, another thing to look for on the live stream is Dawn Rasmussen's family. So, one of the best things about watching Dawn compete is seeing her husband, Justin Rasmussen, in the chat, and then also like her kids using Justin's account to say things like, "Go, mom." I think it's really cute.
Nice. I assume younger kids?
They're, like elementary school age.
Yeah, okay.
And Dawn placed 11th at U.S. Nationals this year, and she was 34th at last year's Worlds. Andrea and Dawn are also pairing together. They placed 25th at 2023 Worlds pairs. So probably not, that puzzle was not up their alley. They did place 4th at U.S. Nationals in pairs.
So there are a bunch of veterans on the team, but also somebody new to world competition.
Yes. So this will be their 4th teammate, Lauren Kotz. This will be her first year at Worlds.
And has she been with this team for a while?
She has been with this team for a while. Okay. So I would say she stayed local to Minnesota and doing the online speed puzzling competitions for a while, but she came to U.S. Nationals. She's been doing the big competitions with them. She was at Winter Carnival with them in January.
In a lot of ways, Lauren is the standout performer on that team, and that's saying something when you have Sarah also on your team.
Bring in the stats, Rob.
She's typically, she ranks on average 2.3, so right around second place for everything that she enters. She finishes about 1.6 times as fast as the middleist person, and her fastest pieces per minute was 12.13. So she's pretty fast across the board. Her average placement rate is 11.25, which puts her right there near the top, not quite at the top. So she is overall in my rankings about third fastest person. So she's for a person you don't hear about as much. She's amazing.
Yeah, she definitely stays a little under the radar. I've heard from Sarah that she listens to heavy metal when she's puzzling, so someday I want to try her playlist. And Lauren and Sarah placed second at U.S. Nationals in the pairs competition this year. So they will be pairing together as well as competing with their team. We put the betch in You Betcha.
Love that name.
Yeah, and they'll be ones to watch for sure. So we just talked about the first Rookie Worlds puzzler of the episode. Let's talk about another rookie who I'm super excited to see debut at Worlds, Alice Rowe.
Yeah, the phenom who just burst on the scenes, and I guess I use that word or that phrase a lot, but in the most recent individuals, sweeping both the individuals competition and the puzzle chess competition. Mm-hmm. So she's capable of doing a lot of things. I enjoyed when she finished the individuals. She seemingly teared out of the room. Like she finished and then she sort of left the room for a little while. I imagine to compose herself, but I don't actually know what happened. Then came back all kind of controlled and collected. So I wonder if it was a little bit of like a person who's, when your head's down doing a puzzle, you can sort of not pay attention to everything else. And when you finish and you finish first and you finish first on the national stage, like I can imagine it can be a little overwhelming. So it was, I don't know if that's the actual story that went on, but that's sort of what I tell myself.
Well, it's because of people like me, Rob, because I definitely, after she won the puzzle chess competition, which was like before the finals, I was like, oh, I need my picture with you and your dad. So I got my picture with her and her dad. And then, like, the next day, her mom was around. So I was like, oh, I need my picture with both your parents and you. Well, but that's why I'm on this podcast, telling all the stories about the puzzlers, because I'm that like overwhelming fan.
I love that. Yeah, I'm the kind of person who's like, I want to talk to that person so bad, but I also want to give them their space. And I like that you're like hey, let's talk.
I need my photo with you. Yep. I'm the super fan. And I'm so excited to see Alice. Oh, and we were talking about Becca earlier, so bringing it back, Becca and Alice will be pairing together.
Yeah, that seems like a great match. And like I said, I think that if you find yourself with Becca, you've made it. And I think that this like deep capability that Becca brings to the table and the sheer power that Alice brings to the table could be a really interesting combination.
Yeah. So, for those of you who know nothing about Alice, she is a 17-year-old basketball player from Colorado. And I like knowing that detail about her being a basketball player because I think when you see her like move over a puzzle, like you can tell that she's an athlete.
She competed in the Colorado state competition, and she finished about 3 times as fast as the middleest person. So that's the fastest difference from any competition I've seen. Now, I didn't recognize anybody from the Colorado state competition, so it may have something to do with the field. But I don't want to downplay how fast that she can be. She was 25 minutes ahead of second place. Uh,
Wow,
she tops the
that's
chart in
impressive.
pretty much all the metrics that I have, except for the fastest
Mhm.
500 time, where she's 10th of all things. But
Hmm.
that really speaks more to the fact that she just doesn't compete in visible ways a lot. I only have 3 things on record, and 2 of them are nationals. So I don't have a lot of data on her. Clearly, she's come out and made a statement. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out over multiple different competitions, and especially on the world
Mm.
stage.
Yeah. And from talking to her a little bit, I think when someone comes onto the scene like this, you want to know, like, what? Like, is this the first time you've tried this? Like, why don't I recognize your name? You're seated at the back of the room because no one knows about you. And I did hear that she was like getting puzzles that have been used in past competitions, practicing them, seeing how her time compared with the top times. So she had, some idea that she was fast and she was, benchmarking herself.
I think I told this story on the podcast before, but I was watching my wife. She was in the same original heat as Alice was, and I was over there watching her and talking to Chiara Del Antonio for a little while, who's also delightful. Maybe we'll talk about her in the second of this series.
Mm-hmm.
But
Oh, absolutely.
I wandered over to the back of the auditorium and saw this young woman very nearly done. And I looked around and nobody was near her. None of the officials were near her because nobody knew to be back there. So eventually somebody caught it. But I was thinking to myself, am I going to have to flag somebody down because this woman, whoever she is just stomping everybody else.
It was impressive. So I think everyone is very excited to see where Alice goes at Worlds.
So who else is on Alice's team?
Oh, yeah. So she's pairing with Becca. However, her team will include, because you might remember, Becca is with the Busy Birdies. So Alice is on a different team called Kind of a Jig Deal. This team is led by Kyle Cosson from Utah. who streams a lot of puzzles on Twitch. After US Nationals this past year, he's referred to himself as the fastest US male puzzler, also the 10th fastest US puzzler. So I don't know how impressive it is to be the fastest male puzzler when you have like 9 non-male puzzlers ahead of you,
Listen, us
but
meager men try and get whatever we can out of the puzzle world. Like it's so rare that one of us shoots up into be competitive at the top level at all. So I'm 100% behind Kyle. You go.
well, there are more male European puzzlers that we'll talk about next time.
Kyle competes a ton, and I guess that makes sense if he's doing
Hmm.
Twitch streaming of things. I have 11 recorded times for him this last year. He does fairly well, with his best stat being he's 10th in the overall average ranks. He usually finishes right around his average rank is 6.8 for 500s. So a solid performer.
Yeah, so the other two teammates on Kind of a Jig Deal are Gail McCormick, who is from Pennsylvania. She is a strong puzzler who has been having some wrist issues over the
Hmm.
summer. I chatted with her last week. It's getting better, but it's really not great, and she hasn't been challenging it. She's mostly been resting the
Probably
wrist.
the right call. Yeah, she's got the sixth fastest time at 37 minutes for the 500s in my data, and she's about on par with Kyle in most metrics, so they're pretty evenly paired there.
Yeah, and this will be her first time at Worlds. And then also, a newbie at Worlds will be Megan Jones from Utah, who will also be pairing with Kyle, I believe.
Yeah, Megan hasn't done a lot of competitions, so there's not a lot for me to say about her, other than I think her average pace for pieces per minute is around 9, which is solid but not stunning. But again, we haven't seen much from her, so it's hard to judge.
And Gail will be pairing with Kat Dilks
Oh, fun.
in the pairs competition. Yep. All right, so moving on to some more newbies. The final team we're going to talk about, Wicked Quick, beat my team this past weekend at New
But
England
you're still going to say
Regionals.
nice things about them.
I will say nice things about them. They are a very interesting team. So for international puzzlers who might be listening, I feel like I should explain what the word wicked means. I can do this because I grew up in an area where I grew up saying wicked. Basically, wicked is a synonym for very or really. It's like saying like so, like, oh, it's wicked hot outside. Um,
I'm glad that we could have you here to translate for us.
yeah, I moved away and I stopped saying it. Like I don't say it anymore. Um, but it's from this New England region. It's used here. And the team comes from Massachusetts and Connecticut, so that's why they picked that name. And the person that put the team together is Mari Black, and Mari is a very fast puzzler. I think probably the fastest puzzler on the team. Do you have any stats for Mari, Rob?
She's the one that really stood out is that she has the third fastest 500 piece finish time at 33.5 minutes. So again, she can burst a fast puzzle out there.
So I think something interesting about Mari is that she is a professional violinist or like fiddler. And she's done competitive fiddling and won like fiddling championships. So I think she's like taken what she's gained about like what she's learned about practicing and competing and taken this, meta knowledge and applied it to competitive puzzling,
First of all,
which I
meta
think is
knowledge,
cool.
very fancy. But yeah, I think you're 100% right. She would have a lot of experience in competitive situations, a lot of experience being the focus, which is often hard for folks to get their head around, especially in individual competition and where everybody's looking at you and you have an opportunity to compete for number one. And so that comes with it a lot of sort of mental pressure. So that it does help. I can imagine it helps in terms of just being prepared for competing.
Another interesting thing about Mari is she's kind of like started a trend here in the US, I would say, of like redoing puzzles to improve strategy.
Mm.
So I would say last year, my own strategy was just to do as many different puzzles as I could and to not repeat puzzles. Mari really emphasizes, and you'll see this on her Instagram, like redoing the puzzle to improve the process so that you can learn how to approach that kind of puzzle and take that away and apply it to new puzzles.
Yeah, I only get bits and pieces about this team in terms of their practice approach, but I hear great things. Like I'm really excited about their sort of thoughtfulness that they put into practicing. I think they said at nationals they want to be the most practiced team, or maybe it was just pairs with Mari and Emma. They wanted to be the most practiced. So they've got the work ethic to make it happen.
Yeah, so you mentioned Emma there. Emma Pan is Mari's Paris partner, and I was there when Emma and Mari met. So
Little
it's
meet
me
cute.
again. Got my picture with them. Um, it was at a library speed puzzling competition in Connecticut back in May 2023. And when I got there, I like signed my name on the sign-in sheet and I noticed Mari's name, right? Like I was scoping out the competition and I was like, Mary? Mary? And she's like, it's Mari. Are you Evie? So,
So she was
we
scoping
had
out the competition as
obviously
well.
seen each other. Yeah, we had seen each other's names on, like speedpuzzling.com competitions. Now, Emma was pretty quiet, and we didn't really notice her until she finished beating me and my work colleague, Margaret. And so then after I finished, I went over, I was like, oh, who are you? Have you done this before? She
Can I
had
take a
actually
picture with
been,
you?
yeah, she had been to U.S. Nationals in 2022. At that point, she was puzzling with her partner, Robbie. Mari was puzzling with her partner, Jim Eakins. And we all talked for a while, and Mari and Emma figured out that they live very close to each other and started like trading information about libraries and where to get, like borrow puzzles from in their area. And so that's how that Paris partnership was born.
Nice. You've been there at a lot of the pivotal moments in puzzle history.
I try to insert myself in all of the puzzle history moments. Um, yeah, Emma has gotten so much better in the past year since she started puzzling
Is
pairs
that right?
with Mari. It's really impressive.
I have to go back
Yeah.
and look at that trend because I'm always curious as to whether how much you can improve your skills at puzzling and how much of it is sort of an innate capability. So I love a good practice story, in part because
Yeah.
I'm hoping someday a practice story will make sense for me as well.
Yeah. I mean, maybe you just need to pair with Becca or Mari and
I
that'll
feel
be
like
it.
I feel like Becca is a position you earn, you don't just get. So I feel like I have to put in a lot of work before I could pair up with Becca.
That's okay, Rob. I'm still working on that too. I haven't gotten to pair up with Becca yet.
I should be clear. You can be a notable person in the puzzling world without having gone through Becca, but just the number of folks who have had that
Well, no,
luxury.
I'm putting this out there so that Becca feels guilty and asks me to pair up with her.
Yeah, everybody's going to be asking her now, and she's going to feel so much pressure to have to pick and choose.
Yeah, so as a pair this summer, Emma and Mari won the back-to-back Massachusetts State Championship and the New England Regional Championship this past month. They also placed seventh in the pairs finals at the 2024 U.S. National. So the other two teammates of Wicked Quick will also be competing together as a pair. They are Sammy Brownlow and Emily Chandran. I was also there when Emily and Mari met.
At this point, I just assumed.
Yeah, I mean, it helps that it was all in this like New England
Right.
area. We puzzled together last fall at the Big E. like a state fair type puzzle competition in Massachusetts.
Hmm.
And Sammy is another Connecticut puzzler. So I live in Connecticut. Sammy lives about an hour and 15 minutes away. So I like make a drive down to Sammy's house about 3 times a year
Really?
with my trunk full of puzzles. We swap. Sammy maintains an Excel puzzle catalog with pictures of each puzzle that you can't look on a cell phone, like because it'll crash. So you have to look on at it on a computer.
Uh-huh.
But I like shop the catalog. I make a list of like like 50 puzzles that I'm gonna borrow,
Uh-huh.
and then I like drive down, return my puzzles.
Do you have like a library card?
No, I have my own tab in the spreadsheet. um, But yeah, I just like surprise Sammy with the puzzles I show up with. I'm like, this is what you get to borrow.
I was gonna say it's a very one-sided relationship here. Like you're
Yeah.
like, I'm going to take this one and this one and this one, and Sammy's like, I get what I get.
Pretty much.
Hmm.
Yep.
Hmm. Well,
Yeah.
obviously it's working.
Yeah. You can ask Sammy about that. And Wicked Quick is also the only US team that I know that has a coach. So Amari's partner, Jim, who's actually been commentating on a couple of the recent Euro Jigsaw
I
Jams.
just learned that.
Yeah. So and is also very present in the live stream chats. So you might have noticed him at the Portland Jigsaw Masters in the chat. He was also in the chat a lot at US Nationals. I'm just fascinated by their team process because, as you said, they're very thoughtful about it and they have a coach.
Yeah, I'm giving some thought to doing a coaching related episode with at least
Mhm.
potentially bringing in Jim. He likes to couch it as if he's just an active bystander. So I haven't got the sense that he calls himself a coach with any seriousness. That's probably not the right way of saying it. But I'd love to get him on. And I know Jonathan from speedpuzzling.com has got some coaches at the high school and school level. So I'm super interested in the emerging role of coaches in the speed puzzling community.
Yeah, you should also talk to Amelia Lieberman
Hmm.
from Finland,
Yeah,
probably.
yeah. She's doing a lot of work to do probably the most upscale coaching that I've seen. I love his Instagram account is I think Puzzle Nerd, which made me immediately fall for it. And I think even the first couple of things he posted were like stats. So I was instantly enamored with Jim the moment I saw his account come out into the world.
Those are the newbies. There are a few other newbies who will be coming to Worlds this year. One is a very oldie newbie.
That's right. That'd be Andrew Bradburn. So Andrew is a veteran from the old school. So he's not like a veteran from 2019, but you probably know a little bit more about this than I do. What's his background?
Yeah, Andrew competed in some of the jigsaw puzzle championships in Ohio back in the 1980s.
Wow.
I think, he placed in the top three. I got to meet him at Yvonne's 40th birthday party.
That's right, because he was an original member of the Golden State Puzzlers. So he's out there in that
Yeah.
community.
And I also got to puzzle next to him at the US National Finals. And he was so kind and supportive. Like, he was like, "You're doing great, Evie." Like, I was ahead of him. And he was just like, he was cheering me on. He was really
That's
nice.
great.
And then another newbie is Min Deng.
Yeah, Mindeng had the second fastest overall time in my data at 31.9 minutes.
Wow.
Her pieces per minute rate is about 10, which puts her in the middle of the elite folks. But I know that she was out here for the Portland Jigsaw Masters, and I had a chance to talk with her and watch her puzzle. And she was the first conversation I had with her was with her and her pairs partner at the time, Jessa Douglas, and they were talking about how, you know, Ming was doing all the kind of blocking, tackling stuff of sorting things and getting things in order, and then would just hand stuff off to Jessa. So it made it sound like, you know, she was a supporting player, but then you went and watched Ming actually compete in individuals, and she's no joke. She's a fun person to watch. So I'm looking forward to seeing her show up in global competition.
Min is someone who's definitely gotten faster in the past year. I think she is faster in the online competitions and has been getting in her head a bit in in-person competitions and sort of underperforming at US Nationals and the Portland competition. So I hope that she is getting the experience that she needs in those in-person situations to kind of get in the right headspace that she does with her online competitions, because she is so speedy and has gotten so speedy lately.
And she's pairing with Lindsay Steenstra, I believe, from the Golden State Puzzlers. And I think she is on a team with, among other folks, Faith Taylor from the USA JPA.
Yes, that's right. Yep. Her team is Faith Taylor, Jamie Ambabo, and Liz
I was going to let you take a stab at it. Yeah. So
Nick.
I have Elizabeth McElveen, McElveen, who I forget exactly what stat and I don't have it written down, but like something that she did this last year caught my eye. I was like, oh, okay, there's a person to watch. But unfortunately, I haven't actually seen her compete. I don't know much about her. So part of that is the pronunciation of the name. I'm becoming relatively well
Better
known
known
for.
as Turtle. She's better known as Turtle.
Oh,
So
is that who
you can
that
just call her
is?
Turtle.
You know, okay, then I know her actually quite well, and she's very nice. She's
She is
very
very
sweet.
nice.
Well, my
Yes.
apologies for not knowing the full name there, but caught my eye, even though we've chatted a couple of times back and forth on Instagram, and I didn't know those were the same people. So go Liz.
She's someone else who's practicing hard and getting faster.
I think that does it for us for now for the Americans. Keep an eye out for the companion podcast where we talk about the rest of the world and maybe even make a few predictions.
Yeah, so the prelim heats for the teams competition have been posted at this point, and we're still waiting to see the prelim heat assignments for individuals and pairs. So hopefully those will be out by the next time we record, and we can comment on what we might expect to see in those early heats.
E.B. Caron, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Rob.
You bet. And we hope you'll join us on the next episode of Peace Talks. Thanks for listening to Peace Talks. You can follow the podcast on Instagram at peace_talks, and you can send email to peacetalkscast@gmail.com.